Hey everybody, welcome back on the Cal 40 Restoration. Wanted to go through a few things today on woodwork. We're going to go over what we've done to the interior woodwork to try and get it fixed, and also the exterior woodwork, the teak. One thing I'll tell you on these big projects, and I've been through this before, is it's really important to try and set up a shop somewhere other than the boatyard. Don't try and do this work inside the boat. It's just too messy, and you need a clean environment in order to get it done. This boat had a real problem. It had been wet a long time down below. A lot of the material, the furniture inside, the doors and drawers were in really rough shape. All this stuff really needed a lot of attention. So here's an example of it. These drawers were put together with pretty light nails, finished nails. A lot of them had rusted, and the old white glue that they used in there with the moisture inside the boat just literally fell apart. So these were all broken in some fashion. We brought them back. We very carefully knocked them out, removed the nails, took all the pieces and stripped all the varnish off of them piece by piece, and then started reassembling this. And when we did, we used two-part epoxy and with a slight filler in it, and then glued every one of the pieces back together. We used a stainless steel finish nail in each of these along with the epoxy. We clamped everything. And then the last step was we added reinforcing corners in the corner of each drawer so that we had a lot more rigidity, a lot more glue surface area, so they'll never come apart again. The doors, this is one of the forward cabin doors. There were two doors like this in the boat, one to the head and one that went and blocked off the V-berth area for privacy. And these were in really rough shape. They literally fell apart, and we taped them up in pieces and brought them back. We had cracks running through some of these. We re-glued all the cracks and forced them back together again with epoxy and clamps, and then put the panels back in the doors and glued the old doors together. And in addition to that, in the side, we drove fasteners and plugged them into the rail and stile system here to hold it all together so that we weren't relying on the glue alone anymore to keep this door together. Now that the doors are looking so good, turned attention to some of the other pieces. And this was the handrail that went under the windows in the main salons, and it was in pretty rough shape. The sun exposure had really bleached the wood out pretty badly, and the moisture from the leaky windows had rotted a lot of the back side. So this was a little more challenging. We ended up in certain areas it almost looked like it had been burned because it had so much sun exposure. So took them off, stripped them down, started sanding on them, and then used West System epoxy to saturate some of the areas that were rotted. And that came out really well. We were able to continue sanding, and we really brought it back quite nicely. This is a little bit more of a challenge logistically because every one of these has a hidden fastener behind a plug. So we took and varnished this, about 5 layers of varnish, sanding between each coat, and then we have the plugs ready for this. When we get to the boat, we'll go ahead and fasten it in, put the plugs in, and then just refinish these areas and then give all these pieces a final coat of varnish. One other area we're working on, we're going to substitute ash for the mahogany on the battens against the pilot berths and up forward in the V-berth. And this contrast between the mahogany and the ash is really going to break up the interior and lighten it up quite a bit. And I think it's a nice complement. They're very complementary tones, and it's going to give the boat a really nice, rich look down below. And we have a few problem areas we're still working on, and they may not get resolved until the boat's back in the water, I'm afraid, and we really have a chance to work them out. Let me show you what's going on with that. So there are a few projects here that we're going to wait on until the boat's upright and we have a chance to kind of sort it out and get some measurements. This was a big one. This is a bulkhead that was off the main bulkhead. It went fore and aft, and the mast set right on the same platform with it. Problem here, if you look a little closer, is that over the years this completely rotted out. Water both from the head, which is on the other side of this bulkhead, and from the mast step rotted this out. Now we want to replace it. We want it to match the rest of the interior. But we've got to figure out how we're going to get this all waterproof so this doesn't happen again. Next problem was the settees in the main salon were meant to pull out a little bit, and I mean a little bit, like 4 inches. And the mechanism they have for that required them to have a very heavy bunk on both sides, and for a limited benefit, like 4 inches. Stock, they didn't even have access underneath. The goal here is to come up with something that maybe flips over and gives us a wider bunk for sleeping and is the settee that you sit on at the salon table. What I'd like to do next is show you what we did to produce all the teak that's going on the outside of the boat. That's the handrails, the tow rails, and all the washboards in there, which are very visual parts and very important to the look of a Cal 40. Here's some examples of what we're doing on the exterior of the boat, working with teak. Now, teak is wicked expensive, and you try to be very careful with everything you're doing, and boy, I'll tell you, check everything twice, 3 times, be careful when you're cutting things. Very expensive wood, beautiful wood, and it has so much oil content that that's why you end up using it. It won't rot. This stuff right here is almost 50 years old, and look at it. I mean, it's still sound in many ways. It is getting brittle. The oil's starting to evaporate out of it, but this is a example of what we took off the boat, and the reason it has all these holes in it is we were trying to take it off in one piece. It just became time prohibitive. The suggestion I have for everybody is make a pattern out of plywood like this. Because the boat's in Berkeley and I'm in Massachusetts, I made it so I could take it apart. It's in 4 pieces, and I could shove it in my luggage and take it out with me, reassemble it, and that allowed me to check the side of the boat to make sure that the pattern fit and that I really was confident of it, because I wanted to get the new part as close to fitting again and not do it at the yard. I want it to be a pre-finished part. So we've done a good job on that. This should be close to a drop-in part on the boat. And these 2 are just signature pieces. They're beautiful when they're in the cockpit, and we're really conscious of trying to do that. This piece was in pretty rough shape. Example of what we brought off the boat for handrails. They were broken and cracked. There's no way to save them because they simply are too brittle. Too much of the material's gone away. They were originally 1 inch thick. They're down to about 3/4 of an inch thick. They've just been in the sun and the weather so long, and most of the oil is evaporated from these. So we brought them back just for a pattern on angles and dimensions, and then reproduced them in new teak. And we took both of them out of one plank, and we nested one plank, the bases of the handrail, in between the bases of this handrail, and we're able to get them out of about a 6-inch wide plank, both handrails. And they're 12 feet long, and they're going to be matched in grain, which is going to be really nice, I think, on the boat. A lot of work, but well worth it, because this stuff really makes the boat shine. So early on when we were tearing the boat apart, there were a number of discussions about what do we do for a tow rail, and people were making suggestions of an aluminum tow rail or an extruded plastic tow rail, and then Cree walked up and said, the boat's getting a teak tow rail. And that was the end of the discussion at that point, and focused us on trying to produce one. I went to a local supplier here in New Bedford, a company called St. Angelo Hardwoods in Tiverton, Rhode Island. They have a warehouse full of teak. If you need to do a project like this and you need really nice material in thick planks, wide planks, he has a real selection of good materials for solving this problem. These are 10-quarter stock material, which is 2.5 rough. We milled it to 2.25 thickness, and then slit it and created this profile, which is 1.75 at the base, 2.25 high, and tapered 10 degrees on each side. And in addition, we added a dado to the bottom of it, which is going to hold the caulking and prevent it from squirting out if it were a flat surface. Because remember, we're going to be drilling fasteners to hold it to the deck about every 8 inches. And we needed to make sure that we had some caulking in the bottom of this to prevent leaks. Now, I struggled after that to try and come up with a method of scarfing it. And we could have done a long taper, but those are always really hard to align. And if they weather and separate at all, it leaves a really sharp, ragged edge at that point. So we came up with this sort of long S curve. And then it was a question of, well, how am I going to router something that's this thick? And at any rate, I went back and forth for weeks with this, and how was I going to get this done? And then two of my machinists came up to me at lunch one day. I was back here stewing over this, and they said, hey, no problem, we'll just put it in a CNC machine. Now, not everybody has the luck I have of having the access to all this, but it's something in an unconventional sense maybe you should look at, is if you have something that's unique like this and you want a really good joint like this, you might consider talking to a machine shop about cutting this curve into the things, because they're absolutely perfect matches. And I couldn't believe how well this came out, and it was so easy to do. So my thanks to the guys who helped me machine this, and I thank Cree for insisting that we have teak toe rails, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing these on the boat. We're going to have this varnished and pre-drilled to put on, and then we're building a fixture which we'll use to glue and fasten these together. And this is such a nice joint that we've created here that these will fit, and essentially the glue line will just absolutely disappear, and we'll have a beautiful look of a one-piece toe rail from bow to stern. And I'm really excited to see it. Now that we've got all that figured out, we just have a little bit more work to do before we ship them out to the boat.